Alright guys, PunisherMax17 here, and this is the second work in progress for my HMM Gojulas. Now this work in progress is going to be a little bit different than the others. I'll say up front, mostly this is just going to be a little sort of tutorial, sort of just seeing how I paint this. Detail painting. I know I did one of these for the Berserk Fury not that long ago, but I wanted to go ahead and do one for the Gojulas on one of the Gojulas' most interesting and from detail painting wise exciting pieces to paint. A lot of stuff going on these spine pieces right here, as you can see. So that's primarily what this video is going to be about. There's not going to be a whole lot more. So if watching me paint and hearing about that isn't really your thing, go ahead and skip this one and come back at the third work in progress. I won't be offended. That's okay. So let's go ahead and get started with painting this guy. To begin, for painting, the paintbrush is really one of the most important parts. If I can get this to focus on the paintbrush here, it's really important to get one that has the brush not messed up at all. You really want to get a brand new paintbrush before you start detailing something, and you want to replace it if it starts looking like this end is getting frayed and stuff. One or two little hairs going in the wrong direction, that'll completely ruin your paint job. And the brushes aren't too bad. They're like $3 each. I get mine from Hobby Lobby, and they have a 40% off coupon online for any item you buy. So, I use the Master's Touch 10/0 paint brushes. I know you can't really see them well. The camera's not one to focus, but that's what I use. So, I'm using my typical Citadel paints here. And one thing to know before you use these paints, or if you're using these paints, whether they be the old ones or the new paints, is you really want to take a drop of water. Just put your paintbrush in the water, drop it in, and then stir it up with the little bit of paint that's on that little holder part. Whatever you want to call it. Gosh, I don't know. I'm not actually going to do that because I already did that because I've been painting here for a little bit. But that's what you definitely want to do to get a good smooth finish. Now you just want to get a little bit of paint on your paintbrush, and then you just start painting. It's simple as that. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting parts on the spine here. Occasionally you got to get a little bit more, of course. And what that water does, just that little bit of thinning that paint, is give it this nice smooth finish. I don't know how much you can really tell about the smooth finish from the video, but if you put this this paint on here without thinning that out, it'll still cover just fine, but it's going to be a lot rougher in certain places. Now occasionally you're going to get to a little part of the piece that's just too small to easily paint or to get perfectly painted, and that's okay, because most of the time you'll be able to fix that no problem at all. For instance, right up here, I got a little speck of paint on where it's black, where that's not part of this that I'm painting right now. But that's not going to be a problem. One, because I am going to be painting the part up there that's still black in another metallic color. Or two, if you have a little bit extra of the paint that you painted the piece itself with, then you can just dab some of that on there, and whenever you top coat it, that'll all blend in real nicely. You don't want to dab a whole bunch, but just enough to cover that metallic bit up. So occasionally you're going to want to dab your paintbrush in the paint or in the water again, just to keep the paint from building up on the paintbrush itself. If that paint is on there a little too long, it'll start drying on there, and then that will have the same effect as the non-thinned paint. It'll just start making your paint glob up in certain places, have a rough, uneven finish, and you don't want that. So I hope this will be a good, useful video to some of you guys out there who may be interested in detailing or want some just custom ideas for your own Gojulas, possibly. some ideas of ways to do the paint. Now, whenever I go into paint, I don't have a preset pattern in mind necessarily. I kind of just paint as I go. Now, that's not to say I don't have, I don't necessarily just drop my paintbrush somewhere. But as you can see in this part, there's sections of it that are, just set apart. Look like, logically, if this were actually a giant mechanical robot, they would probably be made out of some sort of steel rods or aluminum rods or something, iron. And you can see how these parts are all kind of set up from the rest of it. So I paint those. I decided to go ahead and paint those in chainmail, which, by the way, I actually found. That's pretty exciting news for me. If you saw my first work in progress, then that was missing at the time. I didn't know what had happened to it, and I ended up finding that in a random container of paints that I forgot I even had. So that was great. I've been using that a lot, and that actually is my main kind of color I like to use. I was using bolt gunmetal as my main color, or the darker of my 3 shades of silver, but that's a little darker than I like my main color to be. So it was very exciting to find chainmail. I had been relying a little heavier on mithril silver at the time just because of that. But now I use that a little more sparingly, and this chainmail a little more, I don't know what word I'm looking for here. I don't know. I just use it more. So that's what I'm going to do with chainmail there. I'm going to go ahead and move on to bolt gunmetal. Now, if I was actually doing this part, I'm doing it for the tutorial here, I would be sure and get the sides, the little extra bits. For instance, let me get it in camera frame here. Right in there, you'd want to get that silver. I know it doesn't show up well. And on the other side of the part, of course, because this is a two-sided part. This is 2 parts of the Zoid already put together and painted. I put them together prior to painting it so that I could get rid of a little bit of that seam line, and it would just make painting that much easier. But I'm just doing a bit of a simplified version of this part for the video, and then I'm going to be going back and touching it up once the video's over. Just because I'm at a little bit different of an angle than I usually paint at, and I don't want to take the chance of messing something up really bad. Plus, there's no reason for you guys to sit through watching me do 2 sides of this. I'm sure you'll get the idea after just one. Not that necessarily you can mess up a piece too bad. You don't want to get discouraged if you are detailing something or painting something and you mess up. It's not a big deal. One, you can mask it with other paints, you can paint over it, touch it up with the original color like I said, if you have the color that you airbrushed the part in, or spray painted the part in, or whatever you did with it. Just touch it up with that. Decide to paint that part where you messed up on a different metallic color. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. Or you can just repaint the part. That's always an option. I know I've had to do it plenty of times in the span of me working on models. There'll be plenty of times if I mess up a detailing of a part, if I accidentally scratch a part, if I just don't like the job I did airbrushing it, just re-primer it, or don't even really have to re-primer it sometimes. Just paint over it, airbrush over it. It's, mistakes happen. And that's something I feel like a lot of people, me, myself included, whenever I started modeling, you just got to accept that you're going to mess up, things are going to go wrong, and you can't let yourself get discouraged about that. That was the primary reason, in all honesty, for my absence from YouTube for, gosh, what was it, like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months. There, last fall and late summer, last fall, that kind of time period. I had got discouraged with my blade liger. I messed up on some stuff with it. I got discouraged. I didn't mess up anything permanently, of course, just kind of, I wasn't happy with how it was going. So I just kind of stopped because I got frustrated. And then I got the Gojulas and stuff. I got back into this a lot. But it's something you can't let get to you. And I think it's all something that we can learn. You know, just not to get too frustrated with the models. I know I'm kind of rambling on about theories of life or whatever and life lessons, but there's only so much you can talk about when you're painting a piece, I suppose. So, now I have all of those two colors on. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my enamels. Now I'm going to paint the gold first. I'm going to paint the gold on these two little tubes here. And typically, with this Tester's Gold, that's what I use, I have to do 2 coats of it to really get the look I'm going for. So I'm going to do that first before I do any of my copper. Now yet again, you can always try to be good and in the lines for this, as you may say, but if you go over, it doesn't matter. You can fix it. You spill a little bit over, just get some of that bolt gun metal out, you know, or I can get some of that bolt gun metal out on my piece, and just touch it up, you know, no problem. No need to get too stressed out over something like that. For instance, somehow I got a smudge of gold right there, so I'll have to fix that up, but I'll do that in a minute. So I got my first coat of gold down. I'm going to move on to the copper, and then I'll touch up that bolt gun metal afterwards, and I'll get a few other places that I was going to get. You always got to be sure to shake up these enamels really well. And if you've had them open just for a little too long, be sure to shake them up, to close them, of course, and shake them up. Just because if that paint sets for too long, you're not going to get a good full color with it. Alright, painted those 2 little sections, and I'll paint this over here. And as always, I'm going to touch up these little portions after the video. You don't want to forget, you know, the sides, the back, the little crevices that you may not always think of, but you just want to think through what you're doing when you're painting. For instance, painting down there with the copper, painting there with the bolt gun metal, stuff like that. So I got my copper painted there. I am going to go back and touch up a few colors with the acrylic Citadel paints. For instance, I forgot that I was going to paint this in chainmail, although I just used mithril silver. So that was my mistake. That's what I get for having 3 paints open at a time, I suppose. This is what I was going to paint in mithril silver. Alright. Now I'll go get my chainmail. I'll touch up this part that I did mess up on. And I'll paint it over here. And lastly, I'll get my bolt gun metal out and touch up this part that I got the gold on. So there we go. That is my quick detailing tutorial painted spine for the Gojulas. So that's what he looks like, just real quick painted. I have a complete one painted here, so let's move this one out of the frame. And then, as you can see, it is fully painted on both sides. And the top and all over the place. I know I was getting some shadows there, so you couldn't quite see it all. But that's what it's going to look like after you paint the whole thing on all sides. So, really, I just wanted to show you guys a little detailing tutorial. I thought it never hurts, and if there's somebody out there that it helps out, then awesome. I'm glad I could help. And these are great pieces to do examples on. They're really nicely molded, nicely sculpted, and there's just a lot of details to paint. So, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I will do my best to get back to you in a timely manner. I've been checking my YouTube daily now, so as long as I see your comment, I'll respond to it. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys, those of you who stuck around all the way through the tutorial, and I will see you next time.